Imagine standing at the edge of a forest. At first, you might notice only the trees, their height, the density of their leaves. But if you pause and look again, other details emerge: sunlight dappling through the branches, roots interlocking beneath the soil, insects weaving paths among fallen logs, and a quiet exchange of air and water between the forest and the sky. What you are witnessing is not just a collection of trees, but a living system, a web of interdependent parts interacting in ways far more complex than any single element could explain. This is the essence of systems thinking, recognizing that the world is made up of wholes, not just parts, and that these wholes behave in ways shaped by the relationships and dynamics within them. A system, as scientists and thinkers have come to understand, is a group of interdependent objects functioning as a whole. This can be as simple as a bicycle, with its wheels, gears, and frame working together to provide movement, or as intricate as an ecosystem, where every plant, animal, and microbe plays a role in the continual cycle of life and death. Systems are everywhere. The human body is composed of organ systems, cities are complex social and physical systems, and even our planet itself is a system of systems, with climate, geology, and living organisms interlacing in a delicate balance. What makes a system more than just the sum of its parts? At its core, every system has three defining features: its elements, the interconnections among those elements, and its purpose or function. Elements are the basic units: trees in a forest, organs in a body, or people in a community. But simply assembling elements does not create a system. It is the interconnections, the relationships, flows, and influences that bring the system to life, allowing it to act as a coherent whole. Finally, every system has a purpose, sometimes explicit, sometimes implicit, that shapes its behavior. For example, the circulatory system's purpose is to transport blood and nutrients, while an ecosystem's purpose might be more diffuse, tied to the survival and flourishing of its inhabitants. Systems thinking invites us to shift our perspective, to look beyond individual events or isolated problems and search for patterns, structures, and relationships that give rise to what we observe. Instead of focusing solely on single causes and simple effects, systems thinking encourages us to ask, how do the parts fit together? What feedback is shaping the situation? What patterns repeat over time? This approach contrasts with reductionism, which seeks to understand the world by breaking it down into its smallest components. While reductionism has its place, especially in fields like chemistry or molecular biology, complex challenges often resist simple, linear explanations. One of the most powerful tools in systems thinking is the concept of feedback loops. Feedback loops drive system behavior cycles where the output of a process feeds back into the system as input, influencing future actions. There are two primary types: reinforcing and balancing feedback loops. Reinforcing, or positive feedback loops, amplify changes and can drive exponential growth or decline. Imagine a bank account earning compound interest. The more money you have, the more you earn, which adds to the total, and so on. In nature, population growth can follow this pattern, with more individuals leading to more births, which in turn produces even more individuals. Balancing, or negative feedback loops, act as stabilizers, resisting change and promoting equilibrium. Consider how your body regulates temperature. When you get too hot, you sweat, cooling your body and bringing your temperature back down. When you are cold, you shiver, generating heat. These loops keep the system within healthy boundaries. Natural systems, from predator-prey relationships to the carbon cycle, are governed by intricate feedback processes that help maintain stability or, at times, lead to sudden shifts. Feedback loops are not always obvious. They often operate beneath the surface, invisible until we step back and look for patterns over time. Systems thinkers use mapping tools to make these relationships visible, revealing how small interventions can ripple through a system in unexpected ways. For example, in public health, addressing a disease outbreak involves tracing not just the immediate spread of illness, but also the social, economic, and environmental feedbacks that influence health outcomes. Recognizing these loops allows for more effective, sustainable solutions. But systems thinking is about more than feedback. At its heart, it is a holistic approach, a way of seeing the world that emphasizes synthesis over analysis, context over isolation, and relationships over individual components. This holistic perspective is essential for tackling complex, interconnected challenges, from environmental sustainability to organizational change. When we view problems as isolated events, we risk missing the underlying structures and interdependencies that drive behavior. By shifting our focus from parts to wholes, from objects to relationships, we uncover the deeper patterns that shape outcomes. This way of thinking is especially important for understanding natural systems. Nature is a system of systems, ecosystems nested within landscapes, organisms within populations, all interacting through flows of energy, materials, and information. Living systems are open, self-organizing, and in constant dialogue with their environment. For example, a wetland is not just a collection of water, plants, and animals, but a dynamic system that filters water, supports biodiversity, and buffers against floods. Disrupt one part, drain the water, or remove a key species, and the entire system can shift, sometimes in unpredictable ways. Human societies, too, are composed of systems within systems. Families, organizations, economies, and governments are all shaped by interconnections and feedback. Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, for instance, describes how human development is influenced by nested environmental systems, from the immediate family to broader societal forces. Understanding these layers and the flows between them is crucial for effective decision-making and policy. Boundaries are another key concept in systems thinking. Every system has boundaries, sometimes clear, sometimes fuzzy, that define what is inside and what is outside. These boundaries are not fixed, they are shaped by our perspective and the purpose of our analysis. For example, when studying a city's transportation system, one might include roads, vehicles, and people, but also consider air quality, economic factors, and even cultural attitudes toward travel. By consciously defining system boundaries, we clarify what we are analyzing and avoid overlooking critical connections. Systems thinking also reminds us that systems are often non-summative. The behavior of the whole cannot be predicted by simply adding up the behavior of the parts. This phenomenon, known as emergence, explains why systems can produce surprising or counterintuitive results. A school, for example, is more than just students, teachers, and classrooms. It is a social system, with a culture and dynamics that emerge from countless interactions. To practice systems thinking is to cultivate curiosity and a willingness to look beyond the obvious. It is a mindset as much as a method, requiring us to move from immediate events to underlying patterns, and from patterns to the deep structures that generate them. It is also a lifelong practice, never truly complete, as the world's complexity constantly challenges our understanding. Systems thinking equips us to anticipate unintended consequences, to design sustainable solutions, and to adapt in the face of uncertainty. In a world where problems are rarely isolated and solutions often have far-reaching effects, the principles of systems thinking offer a powerful lens for scientific inquiry and practical action. By focusing on elements, interconnections, and purpose, by seeking out feedback loops and appreciating emergence, we move closer to understanding not just how things work, but why they work the way they do. And in doing so, we prepare ourselves to navigate and perhaps even shape the complex systems that define our lives. Imagine a world where every action loops back, subtly shaping the next moment in a continuous cycle of cause and effect. This is the essence of feedback loops, a central motif in systems thinking, where nothing exists in isolation and every effect becomes a new cause. Feedback loops are the invisible hands guiding the behavior of systems across nature, technology, society, and even our own minds. Understanding these loops unlocks the ability to perceive why systems change, stabilize, or spiral out of control. To unravel the intricacies of feedback, it helps to picture a feedback loop not as a straight line, but as a circle. In this cycle, the output of a process returns to influence its own input, creating a dynamic pattern of change or resistance. System scientists identify two fundamental types of feedback loops, reinforcing and balancing. Each shapes system behavior in distinct ways, driving either amplification or self-correction. Reinforcing loops, often called positive feedback loops, act as engines of change. They drive exponential growth, runaway effects, and sometimes spectacular collapse. In a reinforcing loop, a change in one direction creates conditions that encourage further movement in that same direction, a classic snowball effect. Consider the phenomenon of trust building between people. One act of trust leads to reciprocation, which encourages more trust, deepening the relationship in a virtuous upward spiral. But reinforcing loops can also be vicious. Panic in a crowded room can escalate rapidly. One person's fear prompts another's, and soon the entire group may be swept up in escalating anxiety as each person's reaction amplifies the reactions of others. In science, reinforcing feedback loops are everywhere. Population dynamics offer a clear example. When birth rates are high, more individuals are born into the population. This increases the number of potential parents, leading to even more births in the next cycle. Left unchecked, such loops can drive explosive growth. or, conversely, rapid decline if the reinforcing mechanism is negative. In social media, reinforcing loops drive the viral spread of information. A post that gains attention is shared more widely, drawing yet more attention, and its reach can soar in a matter of hours. Balancing loops, also known as negative feedback loops, play a different role. They are the system's way of seeking stability and resisting change. Imagine a thermostat regulating the temperature in a room. When the temperature rises above a set point, the thermostat triggers cooling, bringing the temperature back down. If the room cools too much, heating is activated. This constant adjustment keeps the environment within a comfortable range. Balancing loops are everywhere in biology and society. Hunger regulation, for instance, is governed by balancing feedback. When energy reserves in the body drop, hunger increases, prompting eating. As food is consumed and energy restored, hunger diminishes, preventing overeating and maintaining balance. The interplay between reinforcing and balancing loops gives systems their characteristic behaviors. Rarely does a system contain just one or the other. Instead, most systems are woven from a tapestry of interconnected feedbacks. In population biology, death rates serve as a balancing loop to counteract the reinforcing loop of births. As populations grow, resources become scarcer, leading to increased mortality or decreased fertility, which slows growth and can bring the system back toward equilibrium. Scientists and engineers use tools like causal loop diagrams to visualize these feedback cycles. These diagrams map out variables and show how they influence one another, tracing the circular causality that defines system dynamics. Such visualization is not just academic, it provides a practical way to anticipate unintended consequences and identify leverage points, places where a small intervention can produce significant change. The complexity of feedback loops becomes especially apparent in fields like energy regulation and thermodynamics. Donella Meadows, a pioneer of systems thinking, describes systems as composed of elements, interconnections, and purpose. Feedback loops, she argued, are what make a system dynamic rather than static. In the regulation of body temperature, a classic case of homeostasis, negative feedback maintains internal stability despite external fluctuations. When body temperature rises, sweating cools the skin. If it falls, shivering generates warmth. This balancing act is not unique to the body. It is echoed in countless systems, from ecosystems to climate regulation. Positive feedback loops, while less common in maintaining everyday stability, can drive dramatic shifts in system behavior. In climate science, positive feedbacks can be perilous. For example, as polar ice melts, darker ocean surfaces are exposed, absorbing more heat and causing even more ice to melt, a cycle that amplifies warming. Such feedbacks can push systems far from their original state, sometimes with irreversible consequences. Feedback loops are not confined to the natural world. In business and innovation, regular feedback mechanisms help organizations become more agile and responsive. A company that actively seeks and responds to customer input creates a reinforcing loop. Improvements attract more customers, which yields more feedback, driving further improvement. On the other hand, balancing loops are at play when an organization resists rapid change to maintain quality or stability. The significance of feedback loops extends into behavioral science. Operant conditioning, a cornerstone of behavior analysis, reveals striking parallels. When a behavior is reinforced, rewarded, it tends to increase, echoing the self-amplifying nature of positive feedback. Conversely, if a behavior is consistently met with negative consequences, it diminishes, reflecting the stabilizing action of negative feedback. Ecosystems provide some of the richest examples of feedback complexity. Predator-prey relationships, for instance, are shaped by both types of loops. As prey populations rise, predators find more food, their numbers increase, which in turn reduces the prey population. As prey becomes scarcer, predator numbers decline, allowing prey populations to recover. This dynamic dance is governed by a balancing loop that prevents unchecked growth or collapse, sustaining the system over time. In modern society, feedback loops shape everything from education to public health. In classrooms, teacher feedback can create reinforcing cycles of learning and engagement, or, if negative, cycles of disengagement. In healthcare, feedback mechanisms regulate physiological processes and guide treatment decisions. Even the spread of ideas or behaviors through social networks is governed by feedback, with positive loops amplifying trends and negative loops damping them down. Recognizing feedback loops within complex systems is a powerful analytical skill. It enables scientists, engineers, and policymakers to predict how systems might respond to interventions, avoid unintended consequences, and design more resilient structures. For example, understanding that panic in financial markets is fueled by reinforcing feedbacks can help regulators design safeguards, balancing loops to dampen volatility. Ultimately, feedback loops are not just technical curiosities. They are the pulse of systems, the reason why simple actions can have outsized effects or why some problems stubbornly resist change. They remind us that in a connected world, nothing happens in isolation, and every feedback, whether reinforcing or balancing, contributes to the ever-evolving dance of systems at every scale. By learning to see and map these loops, we gain not only insight into how the world works, but also the wisdom to intervene thoughtfully, fostering cycles of improvement and stability in the systems that matter most. Imagine for a moment a bustling city at rush hour. Cars stream through intersections, traffic signals blink, buses load and unload passengers, and behind it all, decisions are being made by individuals, traffic engineers, and city planners. The city's traffic system is a living tapestry, shaped by countless interwoven actions and reactions. To make sense of such complexity, to see not just the parts but their subtle choreography, we turn to mapping techniques rooted in systems thinking. These tools do more than capture what is happening. They reveal why and how small changes might ripple through the entire system. One of the most powerful tools in this toolkit is the causal loop diagram, or CLD. Picture a web of variables: commuter volume, road capacity, traffic signal timing, accident rates, each connected by arrows that show who influences whom. A CLD uncovers the hidden structure beneath the surface chaos, making visible not only direct cause and effect relationships, but also the feedback cycles that keep the system moving or stuck. These diagrams highlight delays, reinforcing cycles, and balancing forces, giving us a kind of X-ray vision for complexity. Organizations, from businesses to public agencies, use CLDs to navigate tangled challenges, from improving supply chains to managing public health. The same clarity that helps untangle a city's gridlock can illuminate organizational bottlenecks or community health dynamics. Working with a CLD begins with a deceptively simple question: what are the key variables in this system, and how do they affect one another? Each variable is written on the page or screen, then connected with arrows that specify the direction of influence. If increased commuter volume leads to more congestion, that is, an arrow. If congestion prompts changes in commuter behavior, such as encouraging earlier departures, another arrow appears. As the diagram grows, loops emerge. Some amplify change, others dampen it. The act of mapping forces clarity about what matters and how things fit together. It also exposes assumptions. Sometimes, in drawing a CLD, a team will discover that what they thought was a straightforward cause and effect path is actually a circular feedback loop. Such insights can upend prior strategies and open new possibilities. Causal loop diagrams are not just abstract exercises. They help us identify leverage points, places in the system where a small intervention could produce outsized effects. For example, if feedback cycles are causing persistent traffic jams, the diagram may reveal that tweaking signal timing at a single intersection or providing real-time information to drivers could shift the whole pattern. In complex systems, where causes and effects may be separated by time or space, CLDs shine a light on the pathways through which consequences travel and build. Yet as helpful as CLDs are, they have their limits. They elegantly show how variables influence each other, but they do not distinguish between different types of elements in a system, between what accumulates and what changes. To move from understanding structure to simulating behavior over time, systems thinkers turn to stock and flow diagrams. In these models, the key distinction is between stocks, the things you can measure at any moment, like the number of cars on the road or the volume of water in a reservoir, and flows, which are the rates of change, such as cars entering or leaving a highway, or water flowing into or out of storage. Stocks accumulate or deplete, while flows act as the tap or drain. This distinction is foundational in system dynamics modeling. Consider population. The stock is the total number of people, while births and deaths are flows that increase or decrease that stock. In business, inventory is the stock, while shipments and sales are flows. By representing these relationships visually, stock and flow diagrams provide a richer language than causal loop diagrams alone. They make it possible to simulate changes, test scenarios, and explore how the system might behave under different conditions. The rigor of such models can reveal dynamics that might otherwise go unnoticed, like the way a small but persistent inflow can gradually fill a reservoir and tip a system into a new regime. Transitioning from a causal loop diagram to a stock and flow model is both an art and a science. It requires careful thought about which elements of the system should be treated as stocks and which as flows. This shift demands precision but pays dividends in understanding. For example, in environmental management, modeling the accumulation of pollutants, which is a stock, and the rates at which they are introduced or removed, which are flows, can clarify both the urgency of intervention and the likely impact of different policies. The ability to distinguish between what is being stored and what is moving is essential for effective analysis. Stock and flow diagrams are more than just static pictures, they enable simulation. This means one can run scenarios asking, what if we change this rate? What if we alter that inflow? The results reveal not just immediate effects, but also delayed consequences, oscillations, and the potential for unintended outcomes. This dynamic capability is what makes them so valuable in fields from economics to environmental science. As systems thinkers visualize these relationships, certain patterns emerge again and again, regardless of context or scale. These include archetypes such as escalation, where two or more actors respond to each other's moves in a reinforcing cycle, or limits to growth, where initial rapid change slows as some constraint is reached. Recognizing these patterns allows us to anticipate behavior before it unfolds, to see warning signs, and to spot opportunities for timely intervention. Of course, mapping and analyzing complex systems is not without its challenges. One common hurdle lies in establishing clear feedback loops. Objectives may be unclear, communication among stakeholders may falter, and feedback itself can be slow or ambiguous. In organizations, resistance to change may block the flow of information, or feedback may arrive too late to be useful. These practical difficulties can undermine even the most elegantly mapped system. Overcoming them requires setting clear goals, cultivating open channels for information, and fostering a culture where constructive feedback is valued and acted upon. Measurement feedback systems tools designed to collect and relay performance information face their own set of obstacles. Designing a feedback system that is both useful and sustainable can be difficult, especially when the organizational context shifts or when unintended consequences arise. Sometimes, efforts to implement feedback mechanisms introduce new complexities. For instance, in healthcare, flawed or incomplete feedback loops can reinforce diagnostic errors rather than correct them, underscoring the importance of careful analysis. Analyzing real-world feedback structures is also complicated by the nature of the data. Open-ended feedback, such as survey responses or stakeholder interviews, is rich but challenging to interpret systematically. Patterns can be elusive, and the volume of information can overwhelm attempts at structured analysis. This is especially true in cross-national studies or in organizations with diverse perspectives. The process requires not only rigorous mapping, but also thoughtful reflection on what the feedback means and how it fits into the larger system. Despite these challenges, the benefits are substantial. By mapping systems and analyzing feedback loops, we gain the ability to anticipate unintended consequences, identify leverage points, and craft holistic solutions. These tools enable us to move beyond knee-jerk reactions and piecemeal fixes, fostering a deeper understanding of the interconnected forces that shape outcomes over time. Mapping and analysis are not ends in themselves, but means to wiser action. Whether we are working to improve city traffic, design better organizations, or address global challenges, the principles remain the same: clarify the structure, illuminate the loops, and seek the leverage points hidden within the web. In this way, systems thinking helps us navigate the messiness of the real world, not by simplifying it into neat boxes, but by honoring its complexity and searching for patterns in the tangle. With every arrow drawn and every loop closed, we bring a little more order to the chaos and a little more hope to the work of change. Across scientific disciplines, systems thinking and feedback loops have become powerful tools for understanding and addressing some of the most intricate challenges we face. Instead of focusing on isolated components, systems science draws us into a world of interconnected entities, where change ripples outward, sometimes predictably, often with surprising twists. Modern research's embrace of these concepts is transforming how we approach fields as varied as ecology, medicine, engineering, and beyond. As we explore these applications, we gain a profound appreciation for both the complexity of the challenges and the ingenuity behind resilient solutions. Consider the concept of resilience, a quality now central to designing robust systems. At its core, resilience means building systems that can withstand shocks, recover from failures, and adapt to ongoing stress, all while continuing to fulfill their intended function. This is not just about surviving a single storm or enduring a one-time disruption. It is about maintaining operations through waves of uncertainty, minimizing downtime, and adapting to whatever comes next. In scientific research and engineering, this resilience is no accident. It results from careful design, guided by a systems approach that anticipates not only the most likely events, but also the unexpected, the rare, and the cascading consequences that can ripple through interconnected networks. In organizations, resilience is not an abstract ideal, but a practical necessity. Adaptation and innovation reinforce the underlying design of their systems, strengthening their ability to weather disruptions and seize new opportunities. This dynamic process, where systems thinking shapes both organizational structure and evolution, has led to greater stability and agility. Organizations that invest in systems approaches to resilience are often better equipped to recognize early warning signs, respond to changes, and recover from setbacks. This is especially true in fields where uncertainty is constant, such as technology and infrastructure. In technology and engineering, the pursuit of resilience requires a deep understanding of critical processes, the capabilities of enabling technologies, and, crucially, the business or societal impacts of failures. Engineers must ask, which processes are essential? Where could a failure cascade, and what would it mean for those relying on these systems? The answers are rarely simple. Systems thinking reveals that a disruption in one part of a technological network can amplify vulnerabilities elsewhere, setting off feedback loops that threaten overall stability. The most effective strategies map out these dependencies, identify potential failure modes, and incorporate safeguards, such as redundant pathways or automatic recovery protocols, to catch problems early and prevent them from escalating. These principles are especially prominent in research on resilient infrastructure and supply chains, where the stakes are high and the systems themselves span continents and industries. At leading research institutes, scientists and engineers apply systems engineering to societal-scale challenges, developing methods to strengthen the resilience of critical infrastructure, cyber-physical systems, and complex supply networks. For example, supply chains are modeled not as linear paths, but as intricate webs of suppliers, logistics, and demand signals, each connected through multiple feedback loops. A disruption at one node, a factory closure, or a shipping delay can propagate rapidly. By mapping these feedbacks, researchers can identify leverage points where small interventions might prevent large-scale breakdowns, or where added flexibility, such as alternative sourcing or local stockpiles, can absorb shocks. Energy systems offer another vivid illustration of how systems thinking and feedback loops drive scientific progress. As societies strive for energy security and sustainability, the resilience of power grids has become a matter of both engineering and public policy. Researchers focus on microgrids, renewable integration, and building design, aiming to ensure that energy systems can withstand disruptions, whether from natural disasters, cyber attacks, or fluctuations in supply and demand. Here, feedback loops are central. Integrating renewables, for instance, introduces new dynamics. Solar and wind power are intermittent, and their availability can shift quickly. Systems scientists model these fluctuations, designing feedback mechanisms, such as automated demand response or localized energy storage, that help maintain balance and prevent cascading failures. Microgrids, capable of operating independently from the broader network, add another layer of resilience, creating distributed buffers that can isolate and recover from disturbances. Anticipating unintended consequences is a constant challenge in these domains. Even the best laid plans can be disrupted by feedback loops that were overlooked or underestimated. For example, a well-intentioned policy to increase energy efficiency might, through complex economic feedbacks, result in greater overall energy consumption, a phenomenon known as the rebound effect. In medicine, interventions targeting one part of the system can trigger compensatory changes elsewhere, complicating diagnosis and treatment. Systems thinking encourages scientists to look beyond immediate effects, tracing potential loops and cycles of change that might alter outcomes in unexpected ways. This mindset is not only practical but essential for fostering resilience. By mapping the broader landscape of relationships and feedbacks, researchers can spot vulnerabilities that might otherwise remain hidden. They can design systems that are not only robust in the face of known threats, but also adaptable to the unknown. This is increasingly important as scientific challenges grow more complex and interconnected, crossing disciplinary boundaries and involving actors from local communities to global organizations. Looking ahead, the future of systems science is being shaped by the growing urgency of global challenges and the expanding capabilities of new tools and methods. Leading institutions are investing in systems approaches to address issues ranging from climate change to pandemics, emphasizing the need for accountability and new competencies. The foundations of systems, science wholeness, relationships, and cycles of change are proving ever more relevant as societies grapple with problems that defy simple solutions. The field itself is evolving, moving beyond traditional boundaries to incorporate critical practice and action research. Systems thinking has a strong track record in improving problem situations and is expected to continue evolving through critical systems practice. Predictions for the near future suggest that investment in artificial intelligence and advanced technologies will further enhance the reach and power of systems approaches. With the ability to process vast data sets, simulate complex feedbacks, and identify subtle patterns, these technologies promise to deepen our understanding of system behavior and support more effective interventions. Yet, as researchers recognize, technology alone is not enough. The core insights of systems, science attention to relationships, anticipation of feedbacks, and commitment to resilience remain indispensable. As the field continues to mature, there is a growing emphasis on critical systems practice, engaging with stakeholders, reflecting on values, and challenging assumptions about system boundaries and purposes. This reflective approach enriches the practice of systems thinking, ensuring that scientific and engineering solutions are not only technically sound, but also ethically and socially responsive. Ultimately, the story of systems thinking and feedback loops in science is one of ongoing discovery and adaptation. By weaving together perspectives from multiple disciplines, anticipating unintended consequences, and designing for resilience, scientists and engineers are forging new paths through complexity. The challenges are daunting, but the promise of systems, science, its capacity to illuminate the whole, nurture resilience, and foster innovation offers a beacon of hope as we navigate an uncertain future.